Hello everyone. Today's session is about Gladinet Cloud Enterprise multi-zone support. As you can see here, we set up two zones in the same Gladinet Cloud Enterprise cluster. And each zone, we have two zones, New York and LA. We also have two servers. We can have more. Each zone can have more than one worker node. So for demonstration, we only set up two worker nodes, one in each zone, the New York zone, NY, and then the LA zone. And to work with the zone, we have two servers set up. So that was shown in the VMware. So for the demonstration, let's get started by creating users the normal way. So we are going to create a user called the New York user one. And when the user is created a normal way, the storage assignment will be from the default storage. So that may not work if the user is not in the right zone. But anyway, we're going to create a user anyway. So they will be ready because we're going to adjust the zone, and then we are also going to change the storage configuration of each user to point to the right location. So now let's go to the New York server first. So typically this storage for users will be coming from like file servers in New York and the file servers in LA, but for demonstration, we just allocate storage from C drive, right? C drive is very limited to the server, right? So if it's in New York, if it's C drive on a New York server, it's in New York, right? And then if it's a C drive folder, in LA, then it's in LA. So you cannot, be in New York and access a C drive folder on LA, right? So that's once we can get the C drive to work, the file server will work as well. To finish the work, we're going to use the PowerShell because the zone assignment and all these, most of the time, the service provider and enterprise will have their own service provisional portal. So these are all API driven, and then PowerShell is one of the way to consume the API. So it's the GCE automation.dll, and it's shipped by default with the Gladinet Cloud Enterprise. So you can use that module, the PowerShell module. And for any of the PowerShell module, the first thing to do is to log in, right? Because as an admin, if you want to change users' properties and set user up, then you need to log in first. So I would recommend using the PowerShell ISE because it has all the commands available on the right-hand panel, or you can arrange the right-hand panel to be on a different, talk to a different, like south, north, right? So different places, but you can see the help. So first, let's get the New York user one. So we can use the command get GCE user info by email. And again, this is PowerShell. You don't have to use PowerShell if you have other ways to consume the API, maybe a Python API or a Perl API. So if you want to use that, you can write it yourself to consume the API. So the user is returned, and then we can see the success is true. So we now know we got the user's GUID, right? The global unique ID for this user. And now if you scroll up and down for the PowerShell command, you're going to see we're going to set the zone first. So we're going to say, dollar result equals to, so dollar result means it's a variable in PowerShell. So we're going to set GCE user assigned zone. So assignment is done by the user ID, which is the user's GUID. So we need to get, that's why we need to get the user's GUID first. So that's the user's GUID. And then anytime you want to type a command, you can just use the tab key to complete the property field if you know which field you have. And you can assign a zone name. So that's why I have the ISE. So the right hand panel has all the parameters so I can use and look up. So now the assignment is done. We just assign the New York user one to New York zone, and then the success is true. So the zone assignment is done, but we haven't changed the storage configuration, right? So if the user's storage configuration is not in the same New York zone, then it could be a problem, right? So we're going to use the command get GCE local storage config. We're going to construct a storage configuration string. So we're going to use the that helper function to help us construct the storage configuration. So we're going to say this is New York user 1, right? So this folder is local to the New York server, right? So then if you can access C drive in New York, then you can access any file servers in New York as well. So just for demonstration purpose, we use a C drive folder location. So we're going to use the get GCE local storage config. We just get the storage config. It's going to be a string, a long string. We're going to see it, after the command is done. So I think the command was repeated twice. So let's just get rid of it, and then just leave one there. And now we got the storage config, right? So if you print it out, you can just, type the variable's name in PowerShell, and you can see the string. So it's a string there. It's ready. So now we need to set the user's storage config. So we need to change the use because we are assigning this New York user 1 to the New York zone. So the storage config and the home directory for New York user needs to come from a New York server, right? Not from an LA server. Otherwise, it will not work, right? So the goal here is to, let's say if you have users from New York, you want them to access the files and folders from New York, not from LA. When but they can sign into both New York and LA, and then they will get assigned to the correct zone after that. So now let's set the user config and then check the result, and it's true. So the result is true. We assign the users to New York zone. We assign the folder to the user. So now we can use Opera to check out New York user. And then you see here, on purpose, we log into la.gladinet.com. And as you can see here on the address bar, it changed immediately to New York because the user belongs to New York, right? So even though you logged into LA, it doesn't matter. The LA, it's going to check and say, hey, this user belongs to New York. So then it redirects the user to the New York zone before it continues. So now the user just create a folder, and then you can see if we go to the New York server and go to the user's home directory, you can see the folder was created, correctly in the user's home directory, right? So I've just demonstrated the user logs into LA server, but the LA server discovered that the user belongs to New York, and then the user, create the folder and correctly in the user's home directory in New York instead of in LA. So now let's repeat the whole process one more time to create a user in LA. So we're going to create the user in LA and then assign the user to the LA zone, and then we're going to change the user's storage configuration to LA. So it's local to the file servers in LA. And then after you set the zone correctly, then the user can log in from both locations. And typically, companies will have a global load balancer. So instead of saying la.gladinet.com or New York companyname.com, you're going to say file sync and share companyname.com. So it becomes a global load balancer that can be balanced. You can balance the user to the nearest site, but let's say 90% is correct, but just in case the user travels from New York to LA or from LA to New York, it doesn't matter as long as the zone is set up. Then the user can log into the not the correct server, but it will get redirected to the zone that the user belongs to. So what we are doing now, we're just repeating the same process, but instead of doing it for the New York server and the New York user, we're now setting the user up in LA, assign the user to LA zone, and create a folder in LA's file server so the user can use the folder from LA. So it's pretty much the same, and after the the video is done, we're going to also publish the PowerShell scripts here. So if you have you are interested to try it, you can try the PowerShell script yourself, just to get familiar with the API. So now we're just setting up the storage configuration to point the user to an LA folder on an LA file server. So let's just wait for it to finish, and then we got the storage configuration, and then we can set the user to LA. So we're going to check everything later. So as you can see here, the goal here is to minimize the cross-zone traffic, right? Because the cross-zone traffic a lot of time needs to be done via the intersite VPN, right? So it's not as efficient as if the user's storage is in New York. You just say, hey, you go to the New York server first, go to the New York worker node first. So that way, the internet service provider will route you to your correct zone, and then you access the storage from there. It's much more efficient than you're trying to do intersite VPN, right? So you can minimize the because it's a performance it's good for the performance, right? So as you can see here, we log into New York, but it redirects the user to LA, right? But if you log into LA, then it will stay at LA if the user belongs to the LA zone. So now the last step of the verification is to just create a folder from the web portal, and then we're going to see if the folder was created under the user's home directory. And then there you go. As you can see, we logged into the LA server. We found the user's home directory for this LA user, and then the folder was there, right? So now, as a review of what I've shown you, there's we have two zones, right? So the New York zone and the LA zone, and we have two servers. One belongs to each zone, and that zone can be pointing to a load balancer address, right? Like New York Gladinet.com or LA.gladinet.com. Thank you. Bye.